It is your top story this Friday afternoon. Let's take you live now to Pretoria, where several ministers have announced that Chris Hani's killer, Janusz Walus, will be deported to Poland today after completing his parole. Newzroom Afrika's political editor, Lucanio is following that story. In fact, he attended that briefing. Lucanio, it was the 10th of April 1993 that almost set South Africa's political landscape into an entirely different direction. What was said in that briefing today compared to what the SACP's reaction to this decision and, of course, the widow of Chris Hani, what they've had to say?
Michelle, good afternoon. Yes, I think, as you correctly put it, the 10th of April, it was a Saturday. I clearly remember it, 10th of April, 1993. I think South Africa was brought to the brink of literally civil war on that day when we heard, obviously, that Chris Hani, the much beloved leader, or one of the leaders of the South African Communist Party, a leader of the ANC's armed wing, Umkhonto weSizwe, had been gunned down in his house. Obviously, a few months later, there was the conviction of his two killers, one of them Clive Derby-Lewis, the other Janusz Walus. Clive Derby-Lewis served a brief period before he died. Janusz Walus served close to 28 years in prison, Michelle, before his release, ordered by the Constitutional Court on the 21st of November 2022. Today, the ministers announced that he has now completed the mandatory 2 years of his parole and that he has been handed over to the Polish embassy and that he will be deported out of South Africa today. But joining me now for a little bit, more on that decision is the Minister of Home Affairs, Mr. Leon Schreiber. Sir, thank you so very much for joining us. Let me start here. What is Janusz Walus's immigration status as we speak?
Well, right now he is illegally in South Africa. He does not hold any enabling documents that would allow him to be in South Africa beyond the parole period. He does hold the Polish citizenship, and therefore he is now in contravention of our immigration laws. The Constitutional Court order that you referred to also made it clear that his residency in South Africa would be linked to his parole period. And therefore you can see a very clear line that is drawn upon the expiry of that parole period. And so that's the moment we've reached now. As you say, it is a painful moment, and it's important for us all to acknowledge that and to reflect on the moment that South Africa faced back then, and to reaffirm essentially that we must never allow evil people to divide us again. Right now the Department of Home Affairs comes in at the end of this particular process. Of course, after all the court cases, the period in prison, the parole, and we now have a function to fulfill to enforce the Immigration Act of South Africa, and we will be doing that today.
Please explain that, that function and enforcing the act. What does that mean and what does it look like with regards to Walus?
Yes, so what it means now is that immediate deportation must be initiated, and that's what we've done. I think one of the important things to just point out here is that, of course, there are always costs involved in any deportation for the department, but specifically in the case of the individual concerned, we have made sure that South African taxpayers are not footing the bill. So the flight ticket for this individual to leave the country will not be paid by Mr. Hani's widow or by the people of South Africa. The Polish embassy has undertaken to do so. So it is essentially a transportation process from where he is being held to his escort out of the country, essentially.
Do you know if that is happening? What time is it taking place? What do we know about his actual deportation, the nuts and bolts thereof?
Well, we know it will happen today. So that's, of course, a process. There are many forms that need to be filled in, administration that needs to be carried out. And, of course, we need to make sure that it is done in a manner that also cannot be challenged. So that's why we've been working to make sure we get the administrative side right, to make sure that by the time that he does leave the country, there will be no question about how this was handled. And I think we've done a good job so far. The department, I must really commend the interdepartmental cooperation. You can imagine the handover process is really also critical from the Department of Correctional Services to Home Affairs. And I think that has been a good process so far. We must see it all the way through now.
Lastly, his arrival in Poland, or when he obviously hand him over, then that essentially means he's now a free man.
I think for me personally, reflecting on the difficulty of this moment, one of the things that I have thought about is probably the only thing worse than him being a free man in Poland is him being a free man illegally in South Africa. And so that is cold comfort, but it is something for us to keep in mind. I think there are concerns about his reception that many people have, and my message would be a very clear one. Whatever that reception is, will say more about the people receiving him than it will ever say about the people of South Africa.
All right. Mr. Schreiber, thank you very much for your time. Michelle, the Minister of Home Affairs there, Mr. Leon Schreiber, just outlining obviously the process, that they're likely to follow now. The fact that, Walus has been handed over to the Polish officials and that they will basically facilitate his departure out of South Africa. Unfortunately, as the Minister says, it is cold comfort that when he sets foot in Poland, Janusz Walus will be a free man, having served part of his life sentence in South Africa. But obviously, and as we've seen over the last couple of years, that Janusz is a revered person in Poland, and I'm sure obviously the Polish will celebrate this day, while the majority of South Africans, including of course the Hani family, will probably, they'll rue it, Michelle.
What an incredibly painful irony that he will no doubt, as you say, Lucanio, receive a hero's welcome when he returns home.